I'm presenting the story of Ada Blackjack, a very remarkable woman.
The world is captivated by stories of daring exploration and the mysteries of undiscovered lands. While men often led these expeditions, there was one extraordinary story about a woman that stood out. This is the story of Ada Blackjack, an Inuit woman from Alaska, who was left alone in one of the world's harshest environments on a barren Arctic island, defying reasonable odds to survive. What was found of her after 2 years is unimaginable. Join us as we unravel how Ada Blackjack was left alone in the Arctic and what was found after 2 years. Ada Blackjack's story of survival. In the farthest eastern corner of the Russian Arctic and the Siberian Sea lies Wrangel Island, home to extremely diverse and exotic wildlife, the last known habitat of the woolly mammoth. Neither the harsh polar climate nor isolation of this location frightens the Arctic fox, the polar bear, and the musk oxen. Ada Blackjack's expedition to Wrangel Island began with her desire to provide for her ailing son. However, fate had other plans waiting for her. The expedition she joined soon turned into a nightmare, and Ada was left to confront the unforgiving Arctic alone for nearly 2 years, though her story is one of courage and determination. In the year 1921, Ada Blackjack was a young, impoverished Inuit woman from Nome in Alaska. Life had not been kind to her. She grew up in missionary schools, which resulted in her knowing little of her indigenous culture. She held on to her dreams of giving her young son a better life. Ada's son, Bennett Blackjack, suffered from tuberculosis. Ada had no means of affording his medical care. So, when a Canadian explorer named Vilhjalmur Stephenson advertised for native seamstresses to join an Arctic expedition, Ada saw an opportunity to earn money to help her son. The expedition had 6 members, 4 young men, Alan Crawford, Fred Maurer, Milton Gall, and Lorne Knight, a cat named Vic, and of course Ada, who was 23 years old, serving as a seamstress and cook for the expedition. Unlike the others, Ada was not an adventurer or scientist. She simply needed the money the job promised. She was reluctant to join, but was assured she would be back in less than a year, with enough money to take care of Bennett. Wrangel Island was not a friendly destination. It is a remote, ice-covered, barren landscape where the temperature often dips below zero, and the wind moves relentlessly. Food sources are scarce, and survival in such a place requires not only physical endurance, but a mental fortitude to endure prolonged isolation and fear. The men had limited survival skills, but they were confident and determined. They carried a supply of rations they believed would last until a relief ship arrived in the summer. But from the beginning, things didn't go as planned. The weather grew harsher than anticipated, and hunting for food proved challenging. The wildlife on Wrangel Island was elusive, and the men were unprepared for the Arctic's brutal realities. As the months dragged on, the expedition's food supplies got short, and morale began to disappear. By the spring of 1923, conditions had become critical, and it was clear the group would not survive without outside help. Alan Crawford, Fred Maurer, and Milton Gall decided to leave the island to seek assistance. They left Ada and Lorne Knight, who was seriously ill, and set out across the treacherous ice, hoping to reach Siberia and arrange a rescue. They were never seen again. With Crawford, Maurer, and Gall gone, Ada Blackjack became the sole caretaker for Knight, who was suffering from scurvy, a painful and debilitating condition caused by a lack of vitamin C. Despite her lack of medical training, Ada did her best to nurse him, gathering whatever sparse resources she could to make his final days more comfortable. However, in June 1923, Knight succumbed to his illness, leaving Ada entirely alone on Wrangel Island. For nearly 2 years, Ada faced the Arctic alone. Each day brought new challenges, freezing temperatures and the constant threat of polar bears. Ada had to fend for herself. She learned to set traps for foxes and hunted seals to keep herself fed. She learned to hunt, set traps, and adapt to the environment in ways she had never imagined. She built shelters, fixed equipment, and kept herself alive by her force of will and resilience. She also had the companionship of Vic, the expedition's cat, who became her source of comfort and hope. In her moments of despair, Ada will talk to Vic, and together, they face the bleakness of their surroundings. Ada's ability to survive in such extreme isolation and under such harsh conditions showed her resilience. She managed to make shelter out of abandoned equipment, setting up a small tent within the remains of the expedition's camp. She scavenged what little food was left and began to hunt birds and other small animals, showing incredible ingenuity and determination. Despite her lack of formal survival training, she gradually adapted to life on the island. Isolation is often one of the most challenging aspects of survival, and Ada Blackjack's story is no exception. Alone, she faced not only the physical dangers of the Arctic, but also the mental toll of solitude and fear. With every passing day, Ada fought to keep her spirits high despite the constant oppressive cold and the threat of predatory polar bears. Ada kept a journal during her time on the island, chronicling her daily struggles and triumphs. Her entries reveal a woman who was, despite everything, deeply connected to her son and driven by the hope of seeing him again. The love she had for Bennett was her driving force, and it gave her the strength to endure when all seemed lost. Polar bears were a significant threat on Wrangel Island, often coming dangerously close to her shelter. Despite the fear these predators instilled, Ada learned to ward them off, setting up makeshift defenses and remaining vigilant. Her survival was no small feat. Many experienced explorers would have faltered, but Ada's courage and quick thinking allowed her to persevere. Finally, after nearly 2 years of isolation, in August 1923, a rescue party arrived. When they reached Wrangel Island, they found a woman who was alive but had been forever changed by her experience. Ada was no longer the shy, unassuming seamstress who had joined the expedition. She had transformed into a resilient survivor, embodying the endurance and strength of spirit that few can imagine. The rescuers were astonished by Ada's condition. Not only had she survived in the harsh Arctic, but she had also managed to maintain her dignity and composure. She had built herself a new life in a place where survival seemed impossible. Her story became a source of wonder for those who heard it. When she returned to Alaska, Ada found little in the way of a hero's welcome. She returned to a world that barely acknowledged her sacrifices, and her story faded into obscurity. Despite the hardships she faced, Ada remained a quiet, humble woman. She did not seek fame or recognition for her unpleasant experience. In her heart, she had achieved what she had set out to do. She had earned enough money to take care of her son. Though her tale of survival would eventually reach the ears of those inspired by her courage, Ada decided to live the rest of her life in anonymity. Let's look into the legacy of the Ada Blackjack ordeal, the legacy of a survivor. Ada Blackjack. The Arctic is an unforgiving place, and the odds of survival in such an environment are slim. Yet Ada Blackjack, a mother seeking only to provide for her son, defied those odds. Her story, though nearly lost to history, represents how much the human spirit can endure. In Ada Blackjack's tale, we see the strength of a survivor and the power of a mother's love. We also see the resilience that lies within each of us when confronted with the impossible. Ada's legacy is one of hope, courage, and survival. A story that continues to inspire us, urging us to face our challenges with the same unwavering energy that kept her alive on Wrangel Island. In 2003, Jennifer Niven brought Ada's story back to life in her book, Ada Blackjack, a true story of survival in the Arctic. Through Niven's work, Ada's legacy endures, inspiring readers with her unbreakable will to survive. Ada never sought fame or glory, and she never asked for recognition. She was an ordinary woman thrust into extraordinary circumstances. Her story continues to resonate as one of the great untold survival stories in history. Ada Blackjack remains a symbol of courage and resilience to other women, armed only with her determination and her will to see her son again. Her journey shows that heroes are not always those who seek adventure, but often those who find themselves in the fangs of survival and persevere regardless. Let's take a brief look at the woman who cemented the Ada Blackjack unpleasant experience into history, Jennifer Niven. Jennifer Niven is an American author, who is known for her captivating stories on survival, resilience, and human connection. She was raised in Indiana. Niven grew up in a family steeped in literature. Her mother, Penelope Niven, was a biographer celebrated for works on American literary figures. This background inspired Jennifer's early interest in storytelling, leading her to focus first on nonfiction. Her debut, The Ice Master, published in 2000, told the story of the Karluk expedition's harrowing Arctic ordeal. However, she followed it with Ada Blackjack, a true story of survival in the Arctic. The book solidified Niven's reputation for exploring not only the physical challenges of survival, but also the emotional fortitude required, setting the stage for her later works in young adult fiction. As Joe Rogan's emotional reaction suggests, there's more to Antarctica than meets the eye. Whether it's the alarming rate of ice loss, the mysterious structures buried beneath the ice, or the whispers of government secrets, Antarctica is a place shrouded in mystery and controversy. In his tearful revelation, Rogan hinted at a hidden truth about Antarctica, a truth that defies the narratives we've been fed by mainstream media and government agencies. As one of the most influential voices in the world of podcasting, Rogan has never shied away from controversial topics or challenging the status quo. But when it comes to Antarctica, Rogan's perspective is unlike anything his audience has heard before. For decades, Antarctica has captured the imagination of explorers, scientists, and conspiracy theorists alike. Its large expanse of ice and snow holds clues to Earth's ancient past and potential future. But for Rogan, the truth about Antarctica goes much deeper than any conspiracy theory. Before we delve into what Joe Rogan found out about Antarctica, let's talk about what's currently happening with the continent. For the past 44 years, scientists have utilized satellites to monitor the expanse of ice floating on the oceans surrounding the extensive 184-mile coastline of Antarctica. Each year, the fringing waters of the continent undergo significant seasonal fluctuations. In late 2022, the sea ice reaches its maximum extent of approximately 6.9 million square miles, before diminishing to slightly above 772,000 square miles by early 2023. However, throughout these 4 decades of satellite observations, February 2023 witnessed the smallest amount of ice around the continent. Dr. Will Hobbs, an Antarctic sea ice expert associated with the Australian Antarctic Program Partnership at the University of Tasmania, noted that it became apparent quite quickly that a decline in ice extent was inevitable, with no close contest. According to Dr. Hobbs, there is a reduction in ice cover across all regions, spanning the entire Antarctic circumference. During the Southern Hemisphere summer of 2022, the sea ice extent dropped to 741,000 square miles in February 2023, marking an unprecedented all-time low according to satellite records dating back to 1979. However, by mid-February of the same year, the record from 2022 had already been exceeded. The ice continued to diminish, reaching a new low of 691,000 square miles on February 25th, surpassing the previous record by 52.5 thousand square miles, an area twice the size of Tasmania. During the Southern Hemisphere's spring, strong winds over western Antarctica battered the ice. Simultaneously, large areas in the west of the continent had barely recovered from losses in the preceding year. Hobbs explained that because sea ice has high reflectivity, it's resistant to melting from sunlight. However, if there's open water behind it, that can accelerate the melting process from beneath. Hobbs and fellow scientists noted that the latest record-breaking event, the third occurrence within 6 years, has triggered a quest for answers among polar researchers. The destiny of Antarctica, particularly its land-based ice, holds significant importance due to the continent's vast ice reserves, which could substantially elevate sea levels if they were to melt. While the melting of sea ice itself doesn't directly contribute to sea level rise since it's already floating, several scientists informed The Guardian about indirect repercussions that can happen. Sea ice is a protective barrier against the impact of storms on coastal ice formations. If its presence diminishes over extended periods, heightened wave activity can weaken the floating ice shelves, which in turn support the immense ice sheets and glaciers situated on land. A notable area of concern is the conspicuous reduction in ice around the Amundsen and Bellinghausen seas in the west of the continent. Despite an overall increase in the average sea ice extent around the continent until 2014, these adjacent seas experienced declines. This is concerning because the region encompasses the vulnerable Thwaites Glacier, often dubbed the Doomsday Glacier because of its capacity to elevate sea levels by half a meter. But what exactly is a Doomsday Glacier? Wait until you see what we discovered. 20 years ago, the world witnessed a chilling spectacle as an area of ice estimated to weigh nearly 500 billion tons, dramatically fragmented from the Antarctic continent, scattering into thousands of icebergs across the Weddell Sea. The Larsen B ice shelf, spanning an impressive 1,255 square miles, was already notorious for its rapid melting, but the speed and scale of its disintegration caught even seasoned glaciologists off guard. In just 1 month, the 656-foot-thick mass crumbled entirely, leaving behind a shattered landscape that seemed straight out of a disaster movie. Glaciologists who had dedicated their lives to studying these icy behemoths were not only astonished by the magnitude of the event, but also by the sheer rapidity of the collapse. One researcher vividly described the scene, likening it to a colossal wall crumbling into countless bricks, each one representing a piece of Antarctica's fragile ice shelves. But as shocking as the demise of Larsen B was, it was a grim harbinger of even more dire developments unfolding on the West Antarctic ice sheet, particularly along the Antarctic Peninsula. At a gathering of ice scientists in New Orleans, grave warnings were sounded about the precarious state of the Thwaites Glacier, one of the largest and most significant glaciers on the planet. Extensive research conducted by British and American teams revealed ominous signs of instability, with significant cracks and crevasses forming both on the surface and deep beneath the glacier's icy facade. The implications of a potential collapse of the Thwaites Glacier are nothing short of catastrophic. This colossal ice giant, roughly the size of Britain, holds enough water to elevate global sea levels by over half a meter, a sobering thought for coastal communities worldwide. Dubbed the Doomsday Glacier, Thwaites Glacier is responsible for about 4% of the annual rise in global sea levels, making it a focal point of concern for scientists and policymakers alike. Satellite observations paint a grim picture of Thwaites Glacier's accelerating demise, with melting rates far surpassing anything observed in the 1990s. The once stable behemoth is now crumbling at an alarming pace, raising fears that segments of the glacier could fracture and collapse in the next 5 years or even sooner. The collapse of Larsen B and the impending threat posed by Thwaites Glacier are stark reminders of how fragile Antarctica's ice shelves are. It also shows the urgent need for concerted global action to address the root causes of climate change. As temperatures rise and ice continues to melt at unprecedented rates, the fate of Antarctica, and indeed the entire planet, hangs in the balance. It's a race against time to preserve our icy wilderness and secure a sustainable future for generations to come. Now, back to the ongoing events with Antarctica. Professor Matt England's warnings about the importance of preserving sea ice in vulnerable regions housing Antarctic ice shelves couldn't be more urgent. As an oceanographer and climate scientist at the University of New South Wales, his insights shed light on the critical role sea ice plays in protecting these colossal ice structures and the massive ice sheets they buttress. Without this protective barrier, we risk accelerating the loss of ice and triggering devastating consequences for our planet. Moreover, the alarming data provided by scientist Dr. Rob Massam from the Australian Antarctic Division and Dr. Phil Reed from the Bureau of Meteorology paints a vivid picture of Antarctica's changing landscape. In January 2023, an astonishing 2/3 of Antarctica's coastline was exposed to open water, a stark departure from the long-term average of approximately 50%. This unprecedented level of sea ice retreat shows the magnitude of the warming trends gripping the continent and signals potentially dangerous feedback mechanisms that could exacerbate the situation. The consequences of such drastic changes extend far beyond Antarctica's icy shores. As sea ice diminishes, It not only jeopardizes the stability of ice shelves and ice sheets, but also threatens to unleash a cascade of impacts on global climate patterns, sea levels, and ecosystems. From coastal flooding to disrupted ocean currents, the repercussions of Antarctica's melting ice reverberate across the globe, affecting millions of lives and countless species. But what exactly is the main cause of the ice covers reducing? And how long has this been happening? Let's find out. What's the main cause of the ice covers reducing, and how long has this been going on? Let's break it down. Antarctica's ice covers are shrinking because our planet is getting warmer. And guess what's causing that? Humans' love for burning fossil fuels, chopping down trees, and all the other things that release greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. In essence, the main cause of Antarctica's ice cover reduction can be attributed to a combination of natural processes and human-induced climate change. This phenomenon has been occurring over a significant period, but it has accelerated in recent decades due to anthropogenic activities. Antarctica, the southernmost continent on Earth, is home to the largest ice sheet on the planet, containing about 90% of the world's freshwater ice. This ice sheet plays a crucial role in regulating global climate patterns and sea levels. However, in recent years, Antarctica has experienced significant ice loss, primarily driven by rising temperatures and changing environmental conditions. As we mentioned earlier, the main cause of Antarctica's ice cover reduction is global warming, which is primarily due to the increase in greenhouse gas emissions resulting from human activities, such as burning fossil fuels, deforestation, and industrial processes. These emissions trap heat in the Earth's atmosphere, leading to a rise in global temperatures. As a result, Antarctica's ice sheets and glaciers have been melting at an accelerated rate. The process of ice loss in Antarctica can be understood through different mechanisms. One of the primary factors is the warming of the surrounding ocean waters. As the atmosphere warms, ocean temperatures also increase, causing the ice shelves that fringe Antarctica to melt from below. This process, known as basal melting, weakens the structural integrity of the ice shelves, making them more susceptible to collapse. Another contributing factor to Antarctica's ice loss is surface melting. As the climate warms up, the surface ice and snow in Antarctica start to melt, creating pools of water. But here's the kicker. Those pools of water act like little sponges, soaking up more heat from the sun and speeding up the melting process even more. It's a feedback loop that's causing Antarctica's ice covers to thin out and retreat at an alarming rate. Furthermore, changes in atmospheric circulation patterns, such as the strengthening of westerly winds around Antarctica, can also contribute to ice loss. These winds drive warmer air towards the continent, further increasing temperatures and promoting melting. The timeline of Antarctica's ice loss can be traced back to the late 20th century, when scientists began observing significant changes in the region. Satellite observations and ice core data indicate that Antarctica's ice sheets have been losing mass since the 1990s, with the rate of loss accelerating in the early 21st century. In recent decades, the pace of ice loss in Antarctica has reached alarming levels. According to studies published by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, also known as IPCC, Antarctica is losing ice at a rate of over 100 gigatons per year, contributing to rising sea levels worldwide. This rapid ice loss has profound implications for coastal communities, biodiversity, and global climate stability. The evidence of Antarctica's ice loss is undeniable, and its consequences are already being felt around the world. As ice continues to melt at an accelerated pace, sea levels rise, threatening coastal communities with increased flooding, erosion, and saltwater intrusion. Moreover, the loss of ice in Antarctica is disrupting ecosystems and biodiversity, putting species at risk and altering the delicate ecological balance. The findings of the IPCC show the urgent need for action to address climate change and mitigate its impacts. By reducing greenhouse gas emissions, transitioning to renewable energy sources, and implementing sustainable land use practices, we can help slow the rate of ice loss in Antarctica and mitigate the associated risks. The consequences of Antarctica's diminishing ice covers extend far beyond the continent itself. As ice melts, It contributes to sea level rise, threatening low-lying coastal areas and island nations around the world. Rising sea levels can lead to increased flooding, erosion, and saltwater intrusion, impacting millions of people and ecosystems. Antarctica plays an essential role in regulating global climate patterns through its influence on ocean circulation and atmospheric dynamics. As these ice sheets shrink, they mess with the planet's natural cooling system and cause shifts in weather patterns, ocean currents, and precipitation distribution worldwide. The loss of Antarctica's ice covers also has implications for biodiversity and ecosystem dynamics in the region. Antarctic ecosystems are adapted to cold and icy conditions, and changes in ice cover can disrupt habitats, alter food webs, and threaten the survival of species such as penguins, seals, and krill. In addition to its environmental significance, Antarctica holds cultural, scientific, and geopolitical importance for humankind. The continent serves as a living laboratory for scientific research, offering insights into Earth's climate history, geology, and biodiversity. Moreover, Antarctica is governed by an international treaty system that regulates human activities on the continent and promotes peaceful cooperation among nations. Addressing the challenges posed by Antarctica's diminishing ice covers requires concerted global action to mitigate climate change and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This includes transitioning to renewable energy sources, implementing policies to limit carbon emissions, and promoting sustainable land use practices. Furthermore, efforts to protect Antarctica's unique ecosystems and biodiversity are essential for preserving the continent's ecological integrity and ensuring the survival of its iconic species. By creating protected areas, regulating activities like fishing and tourism, and investing in research and conservation, we can ensure Antarctica remains a symbol of resilience and wonder. Addressing these challenges requires urgent and coordinated action to mitigate climate change, protect Antarctica's ecosystems, and promote sustainable development practices worldwide. Now that we know the reason behind the melting ice covers, we need to know who Joe Rogan is and how he's linked to this event. What is Joe Rogan's opinion about Antarctica's reduction in ice covers? Joe Rogan, the renowned podcast host, influential figure, and conspiracy theorist in the world of entertainment and media, has expressed his thoughts on various topics, including climate change and environmental issues. While Joe Rogan is primarily known for his candid conversations and diverse range of guests, his views on specific subjects like the reduction of ice covers in Antarctica have been somewhat reflective of broader societal discourse. When it comes to environmental issues like climate change, Rogan's approach is pretty interesting. Sure, he's had scientists and activists on his show who are all about sounding the alarm on climate change. They talk about how urgent it is to take action before it's too late. But Rogan doesn't just stick to one side of the debate. He's also had guests who question the mainstream narrative on climate change and offer alternative viewpoints. On one hand, Rogan faces concerns about shrinking ice shelves and rising sea levels from experts. They paint a pretty serious picture of what's happening down south. On the other hand, he's also exposed to skeptics who challenge the idea that humans are solely to blame for all the changes we're seeing in the environment. It's this mix of perspectives that makes Rogan's take on Antarctic ice reduction so intriguing. Instead of just buying into the hype or dismissing the issue altogether, he's open to hearing different viewpoints and weighing the evidence for himself. In this context, Rogan's views on the reduction of ice in Antarctica reflect a nuanced understanding of the complexity of environmental issues and the need for evidence-based discourse. One aspect of the reduction of ice in Antarctica that Rogan finds compelling is the scientific consensus regarding the acceleration of ice loss in the region. Numerous studies have documented the shrinking of ice shelves, the thinning of glaciers, and the destabilization of ice sheets in Antarctica, all of which have significant implications for global sea level rise. The evidence is clear. Antarctica is losing ice at an alarming rate, and human activities, particularly the burning of fossil fuels and the release of greenhouse gases, are major contributors to this problem. Moreover, Rogan is struck by the tangible impacts of Antarctica's melting ice on coastal communities and ecosystems around the world. As ice melts and sea levels rise, vulnerable coastal areas are increasingly prone to flooding, erosion, and saltwater intrusion, posing serious risks to human settlements, infrastructure, and biodiversity. The loss of ice in Antarctica isn't just an abstract concept, it's a tangible threat with real-world consequences that demand attention and action. At the same time, Rogan's critical thinking skills led him to question the role of natural processes and variability in Antarctica's changing climate. While human-induced climate change is undeniably a major driver of ice loss in the region, factors such as ocean circulation patterns, atmospheric dynamics, and geological processes also play a role in shaping Antarctica's climate and ice dynamics. By considering these problems, Rogan can gain a more nuanced understanding of the forces at play in Antarctica and the challenges involved in mitigating ice loss and its impacts. Ultimately, Rogan's perspective on Antarctic ice reduction reflects a balanced approach to environmental issues, one that acknowledges the scientific evidence of human-induced climate change, while also recognizing the complexities and uncertainties inherent in studying Earth's climate system. By engaging with diverse viewpoints and weighing the evidence, Rogan exemplifies the importance of informed and thoughtful discourse in addressing the pressing environmental challenges facing our planet. As the debate over Antarctica's melting ice continues, Rogan's willingness to listen, learn, and critically evaluate the evidence will be invaluable in shaping informed decisions and effective solutions for the future. Rogan also acknowledges the role of human activities, particularly greenhouse gas emissions, in driving changes in the Antarctic ice sheets. The burning of fossil fuels, deforestation, and industrial processes have contributed to the warming of the planet, resulting in the melting of polar ice and the disruption of ecosystems worldwide. Rogan's discussions with climate scientists and environmental experts may have provided him with insights into the underlying causes and potential consequences of Antarctic ice reduction. However, Rogan's perspective on the issue does not solely align with mainstream scientific consensus. He has been known to challenge conventional wisdom and question the motives behind certain narratives, including those related to climate change. Rogan's skepticism towards media sensationalism and alarmism could influence his interpretation of data and scientific findings regarding Antarctic ice reduction. Moreover, Rogan emphasizes the importance of pragmatic solutions and technological innovation in addressing environmental challenges. He has expressed interest in renewable energy technologies, such as solar and wind power, as potential alternatives to fossil fuels. Rogan's advocacy for practical approaches to sustainability and conservation could inform his views on mitigating the impacts of Antarctic ice loss while balancing economic and social considerations. In discussing the reduction of ice in Antarctica, Rogan also explores the broader implications for geopolitics, resource exploitation, and international cooperation. The melting of polar ice could open up new shipping routes, access to natural resources, and territorial disputes among nations. But that's not all. Rogan also scrutinizes the geopolitical dynamics at play in the Antarctic region and the implications for global stability and governance. Overall, Joe Rogan's perspective on the reduction of ice in Antarctica is likely to be informed by a combination of scientific evidence, critical thinking, and skepticism toward mainstream narratives. While he may acknowledge the reality of climate change and its impacts on polar regions, Rogan also challenges prevailing narratives and advocates for pragmatic solutions based on data-driven analysis and open-minded inquiry. As a cultural influencer with a vast audience, Rogan's engagement with environmental issues can contribute to broader public awareness and discourse on the urgency of addressing climate change and protecting the planet's fragile ecosystems, including the ice covers of Antarctica. Joe Rogan's opinion means one thing for the rest of us. In the face of these ominous events, urgent action is needed to handle the drivers of climate change and protect Antarctica's fragile ecosystems. This includes reducing greenhouse gas emissions, implementing sustainable practices, and ramping up efforts to conserve and study this unique and irreplaceable wilderness. The time to act is now before we reach a point of no return and irreversibly alter the delicate balance of our planet's climate system. Please hit the like button, let us know your thoughts in the comments section, and don't forget to share with your friends. To enjoy more engaging videos like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching,